Villainous by It's_Kingston on AO3. Episode 27, Chapter 17, Past. "We're so proud of you, dear," her mother said calmly, adjusting the bow that hung beneath her child's chin. "That we are. I knew you'd do amazing with the exams." Her father followed up, pulling her and her mother into a hug. Toga was 14 now, starting high school. She hadn't gotten into a hero school. In fact, anyone you asked said she was quirkless. No doctor would prove it, but they'd certainly denied the existence of any abnormities. It was funny what money can do. She'd been banned from using her quirk since the very first day, since her 16th birthday. It had been 8 years, and her parents mostly stopped talking maliciously behind her back. Mostly. A bystander couldn't, but Toga could certainly see the hesitance anytime her parents went to touch her, including the current hug. After the events of that day, they shipped her off to some well-known paid psychiatrist, who told them that at the age of 6, their daughter already had both psychopath and sociopathic tendencies. That she needed to learn from a young age not to behave like that, in hopes of fixing the way she thought. That's where the hitting came in. If she messed up, she gets smacked. Failed a test? Again. Insulted someone? Again. Messed with anything sharp? Again. Any object that could draw blood was taken out of the house immediately. She considered herself lucky when her parents didn't send her to the dentist to remove her fangs. Maybe they suspected that they would grow back. The littlest of things were banned from the house, and the penalty she received for bringing one in could be up to a scar, courtesy of her parents. She only ever did it once, by mistake. It was in the 4th grade, and borrowed a pair of scissors to cut the paper of work lines like her teacher had asked. She accidentally took the scissors home with her, and when asked about them, she told her parents the truth. They called her a liar, and her father had almost run her up through with the scissors. The kicker? They were safety scissors. So that's why she was here now, being told she was a good kid, despite the terrible parents she had. They of course thought themselves saints for raising such a monster child into a normal one. Toga stood quietly, gripping her back tightly. It would be a long few years, and she couldn't bear to stick around much longer. On the walk home from school, she stopped at a convenience store. She quickly found the kitchen section of the place, which housed a small number of cutting boards, plates, and the knives. That's what she needed. She crouched down and lifted one, examining it before sliding it into her pocket. It fit nicely, and was perfectly sharp and clean. She stood and made her way to the exit, hands swinging by her side as she walked. "Did you not find what you wanted?" the cashier asked. "No, I guess I'll just have to go elsewhere." Toga smiled, and then she looked innocent. With her mask held so tightly to his face, she almost forgot it wasn't real. She looked incapable of harming another. It was midnight, and her parents slept soundly in the downstairs bedroom. Toga had stayed up, and now it was time. She threw her covers off and got dressed into an old pair of clothes, one that could be thrown out if necessary. She grabbed the knife she stolen earlier and made her way to the window. Long ago, she'd been able to see so much better in the dark, and although it never truly faded, it dulled significantly ever since she first discovered it. Ever since she discovered a taste for blood. It never went away, always present and lingering in her mind. Every red object pushing that day back into her mind, a day she longed for again. It was like a hunger, though clearly one she could survive without, as she had done for 8 years. Every day, she felt it scraping for her stomach violently, like something was trying to crawl its way out. But she pushed the anger at her parents away and slid open the window. It was cold outside, though she almost preferred it that way. She slid a leg through the frame and listened for any movements in the house. It was now or never, and she couldn't stand another moment being someone she wasn't. Toga spun through the window with a natural grace and made her way to the edge of the roof. Her mother had painted the rows of rose bushes outside of the house, which needed treadless to grow up. So holding the knife's blade between her teeth, Toga began climbing down the white trellis. She landed quietly in the grass, stumbling slightly. She bolted towards the woods, fear bordering the edges of her mind as she ran from the home. She learned many things that night. The first being that she was stealthy, scarily so by nature alone. The next was that her eyesight, in the dark, seemed powered by blood in a way. It wasn't particularly the birds that had done it, but her quirk, which she was still confused about. Another bird she found didn't heed the same results, neither did the alley cat that brushed against her leg. Maybe it didn't work well with animals. She heard humming, and a man walked from the direction of the woods. He was on the shorter side, and was carrying camping gear on his back. Toga watched him from behind the cover of a tree, with perked interest. It wouldn't be that hard to sneak up on him. She smiled slightly, creeping closer. Then closer. Then she was behind him. The knife was raised, and brought down amorously on his shoulder, and the man screamed out in pain. Toga furrowed her brows, and used her free hand to cover his mouth. Luckily they were in the middle of the woods, and he didn't seem to be with anyone. The man wriggled in pain, fighting against the small girl that held him. Toga dropped him, moving the knife over his heart. "This'll work, right?" she murmured, plunging it downwards. As the knife made contact, blood splurted up, and the blonde was glad she wore old clothes. The man stopped moving, and Toga checked his pulse. Nothing. Perfect. She sat him slightly, moving her head to his shoulder, where she originally stabbed him. She bit down harshly, quite fond of the difference in taste when compared to the animals she'd killed before. After a few sips, she felt strange. Deciding that was enough for the night, she yanked her knife out and held it to admire it in the moonlight. Startled by her own reflection, she dropped the knife, but quickly scooped it back up. She raised a hand to her face, touching her cheek cautiously. She looked completely different. Not slightly changed, but like an entirely new person. Like the man. She looked exactly like the man. Was that the full extent of her quirk? Shape-shifting. She grinned, surprised to see normal teeth replace her fangs she was born with. Wondering how long the effects lasted, she remembered making the features go away as a child, and tried to do the same. Soon, the man's flesh began melting off in her dreads, until she sat there, confused as to where her clothes went. Assuming it had melted away, she took the man's extra jacket and sweatpants and ran back to her house. He wouldn't be needing them, and the night was growing colder. Her nightly activities continued for a while, 3 years to be exact, without her ever being caught or getting into trouble. She was relatively proficient in her killing, learning quickly that the back of the neck usually prevented screaming. She attended school during the day, and adapted to less and less sleep as she became more and more interested in the limits of her powers. She hadn't had her quirk manifest or run out of time, nor has she experienced any ill effects from drinking the blood of others. Then again, she supposed that if her quirk was to shape-shift after consuming one's blood, she'll be able to do so with little to no physical repercussions. She had woken up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, being more tired than normal as she made her way to school. Her grades were high and her behavior was good, so her parents didn't mention the way she was talking or sleeping less. It wasn't guilt, as one might imagine, but rather fear. Toga feared that her parents would find out, and she no longer was able to run free. There was no stopping, no backing out now. She quite literally needed to continue killing. It was, unfortunately, her classmate who ended up on the wrong side of the blade today. It was fine at first. She didn't care. She let one of the other students say whatever mean things about her as they wished. She was always listening, yet couldn't bring herself to feel anything over the situation. It was the little things that they picked up on. Her perfect grades and her role model behavior. They'd make fun of the mask. And that was alright. Toga wasn't the mask she put out for the world to see. She was the person beneath it, known only to herself. But today, she snapped. It wasn't just the mask they poked fun at today. Like, look at her. She looks like a dumb shark with those teeth. Is that actually your quirk? Sharp teeth that make you look like an idiot? A boy had said, snickering. Shut up! Toga snapped back, glaring at him. Ooh, are you gonna try to bite me? He teased, and Toga very much considered it. Leave me alone, she replied instead, turning to walk away. Yeah, run, you freak. He laughed, and Toga turned back around. I said, shut up. She tried again, leveling her best, I can and will kill you glare against him. The boy gulped, but with his friends there, couldn't find a way to back down and keep his pride. Though, if he knew what would happen next, he would have left, even if it meant total humiliation. Yeah, and what are you gonna do, teacher's pet? You're gonna give me the wrong answers on my homework sheet? He mocked, and his friends laughed. Leave me alone before you get hurt, Toga said, stepping closer. Get out of my face, freak! The boy swung a punch at her, hitting the side of her face with an open hand. It stung when it connected, burning and bruising in a way that was almost nostalgic. Scared, Toga reacted without thinking. In a moment, the boy was on the floor. The arm he slapped her with was turned unnaturally behind him. Whether it was broken or dislocated was hard to tell. Toga's knife was out of her sleeve, and in her hand as she kneeled on his stomach. The knife rested nicely in her palm, but fit just as well through the center of his throat, which is where she had put it. The kids behind him screamed, but Toga only yanked the knife before standing up and running. She needed all the head start she could get. Her parents wouldn't be very happy. Alright, so I'm gonna go into psychology whole run right now, and then I'll talk about Toga's situation and stuff. But that psychiatrist is, oh my fucking god. Okay, so the psychiatrist saying that, Toga has sociopath and psychopath tendencies. Oh, you gotta choose. One or two, babes. One or two. Both of them cannot, right? Both of them, cannot. Like, they have different ways of behaving, different ways of, socializing, different ways of viewing, risk-taking, and just different ways of behavior. So, let me just get into it. First of all, if you were to get diagnosed with either a sociopath or psychopath, it would be under antisocial personality disorder and not sociopath or psychopath. You cannot be diagnosed with one of these. You are most likely going to be, on paper, diagnosed as antisocial personality disorder, right? That's the actual term used nowadays. Sociopath and psychopath, I think, are in the volume 4 of the diagnostic criteria, but are no longer in the diagnostic 5, and will not be in the 6 either. So, now let's get into behaviors. With a sociopath, they tend to be more impulsive, more emotional outbursts. They struggle to maintain a facade of normalcy, and they struggle to have, friends and stuff like that, right? So don't let the sociopath fool you. Sociopaths are not what you think. When people think sociopaths and psychopaths, they think the cunning. They think of sociopaths. They think of psychopaths, not sociopaths, right? Psychopaths, yeah, they're calculated. They're manipulative. They're thoughtful. They blend in with society, appearing to be, charming, intelligent, normal, right? But they're doing all of this to exploit people around them, right? Sociopaths, sociopaths cannot do this. They have difficulty maintaining that facade, right? These are the weirdos you see, right? Like, they have difficulty, right? And this correlates into their risk-taking, tendencies. Like, as I said, they're emotional. They don't, consider the long term, right? They usually just, throw things, whatever. And when it comes to guilt and remorse and stuff like that, it's very limited. They might have and feel some guilt or remorse, but it's usually very limited, like super limited, right? As for sociopaths, they do take risk, and they have an understanding of consequences, and as I said, they do really think ahead, right? And when it comes to, guilt and stuff like that and remorse, they genuinely just do not feel guilt or remorse, right? Even when actions that they are doing are causing significant harms to others. Well, sociopaths do feel a bit of guilt, right? They do feel guilt and remorse, right? Relationship-wise on both of them, like friendship, social-wise, sociopaths, they might be able to form bonds with people, but it's often shallow and, based on mutual benefits, mutual contribution. Like, hey, I'm your friend because you're giving me this, and you're my friend because I'm giving you this, right? And a lot of the times, they're not deep. They're shallow relationships. They're convenient relationships and friendships. They're transactional. There's the word, transactional. And even if they're not, even if they start, being a little deep, they're not going to last long because of the emotional outbursts and the, failure to maintain a normal facade. As for psychopaths, they can't form like actual genuine emotional bonds with people. It's superficial, but it doesn't seem superficial to the other person, right? To the other person, oh my god, we're like besties. You know me completely and I know you completely. But to the sociopath, no you don't. I don't care about you. I care about what you're giving me. I care about how I'm benefiting from you being in my life. I don't give a shit about you. The person that I'm pretending to be around you isn't me. If I showed you the real me, you would leave me in an instant because I'm a psychopath, right? So sociopaths are more erratic. Although they may form some emotional attachments, they still exhibit some antisocial personality tendencies, right? Some psychopath tendencies, right? And psychopaths tend to be more controlled, manipulative. They lack, meaningful emotions and connections and a sense of guilt, a sense of conscience, basically. In the end, they both disregard feelings and the rights of others. They just manifest, and, their characteristics manifest in different ways. And there's many characteristics and many things that vary person for person. Do I think Toga has antisocial personality disorder? No, not really. If I were to say that she has either one of those, she lies more with sociopath than psychopath, right? Sociopath, right? But it's still not to the certain degree, because I feel as though most of that isn't because of it's a personality disorder. She has sociopathic tendencies because of her childhood. Because I'll tell you this, yes, childhoods can build you and end up making you a horrible person. The traumatized becomes the abuser. The abused becomes the abuser, right? It's a thing, right? Not all abused people will become abusers, but it is a thing that happens, right? You end up becoming what you hate, right? It's a whole trope in media for a reason, because it's something based on reality, right? And in this sense, if Toga would have actually gotten the love and help that she needed, right? Instead of suppressing her desires and her needs, to find a way to, express it and, go through her needs in a healthy manner would have helped her. It would have helped her. I mean, there's blood banks. There's different stuff. They could have made a silicone toy where she could imitate the action of, cutting, stabbing, and biting in a safe regard, so that she can fill her needs that her quirk is literally pulling her towards, while also doing it in a safe environment where she wouldn't have to harm other people, right? And in doing so, and in providing this for her, she will feel cared for from her family, right? And she wouldn't have the need to lash out and stuff like that, because okay, other people don't, accept me, don't, whatever. My family does. My mom does. My dad does. They do. And that's what matters. I feel cared and loved by them. And they're, doing all they can to make me feel safe, me feel good, and me, being myself and expressing myself. But that's not what happened. And instead we get Toga. Also, I fucking hate the parents with a fucking passion. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.